Mr. Barrie Trower, it's a fantastic pleasure to be here. It has been quite a complicated travel coming here actually, but it's very, very nice to be here, and it's very important what we're going to discuss and what you have to say. So thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, sir, my pleasure.
During the last few years I've been thinking a lot about Shakespeare. He wrote in Prince Hamlet that there's something rotten in the state of Denmark. And of course it's in the state of the world. Something is very terrible wrong. And then we have this former leading scientist in Denmark called Jeanette Quay. She used to teach at Aarhus University. And she got the message from the National Health Board in Denmark that she was allowed to say everything, but that microwaves are dangerous. And that leads me to you. Later on I talked to her and she told me that she believed that the Danes are part of an experiment to be brainwashed by the use of microwaves. And now they believe that they are the most happy people in the world, the Danes. I would like to know from you about children, because children I think is the most precious we got. It's the future. And I would like to start this interview about, we need the parents to realize how dangerous this really is, because it seems like most have not got it yet.
Right. This is going to be a big answer.
It's okay.
Just a couple of weeks ago, I had an appointment with one of our ministers. He's the Minister for Schools, and he wanted me, this was concerning Wi-Fi in schools and its effect on children. And I'm sorry, I'm a slow speaker. I'm afraid we're going to use a lot of tape. I speak very slowly.
That's perfect.
So the minister wanted me to take something to him that wasn't complicated, wasn't more than 2 or 3 sides of paper, that explained everything. And I thought about this, and in the end I did a cartoon. In this cartoon, and I think this is the most relevant piece of paper, not because I've written it, but because it actually refers to every single child in the world. And I think that the minister I spoke to was quite shocked. Now, what I'm explaining in this, that there are 2 different things with schools. Now, the first is, if you have a school child, could you imagine if you have, let's say you have a little girl, and I'm talking about girls at the moment. There is a case for boys, but it's different. Now, if you have a little girl in school, let's say 10 years old, all of her eggs that are to be fertilized are in her body. If she sits with Wi-Fi in front of her, the Wi-Fi is going through the eggs. And what most scientists do not know, and certainly government officials do not know, is that the DNA in these eggs can absorb 10 times more radiation than other DNA in the body. So even if you have a safety level, which there isn't for children anyway, even if you have a safety level, it is 10 times out, straight away. So you are irradiating the eggs inside your little girl. Now, what that means is, if your little girl has DNA damage, and it is likely, we know in the Cold War, women were experimented on deliberately to see the effect of low-level microwave on pregnant women. And we know that 47.7% of the women had miscarriages in the first 8 weeks of pregnancy. So, and there are lots of experiments, so we do know that these eggs absorb radiation. Now, if your little girl has DNA damage, when she grows up and has a baby, if that baby is a little girl, the genetic damage will come out in that little girl, any genetic damage. When she has a baby, your grandchild, the genetic damage will be there, because it is irreparable. It can never, ever be repaired. So what we are doing with our children in primary school is we are saying every single daughter that you have could have genetic disease until there is no more female line. So it's not just children today, it is their children, their children, their children. It's going to go on forever. And we're risking this all because we don't want to buy a piece of wire about that long and plug it into the wall. That's what we're risking. But that's only the first stage. Now, I've been a teacher for many, many years, adults and sixth form, pre-university. And I have had students which are pregnant. And it is legal in this country for 16-year-old girls to be pregnant. The age of sexual consent is 16. In fact, I've taught girls 15 and 14 who've even been pregnant. Now, the next phase of this drawing comes when, if you have, let's say your daughter is pregnant. Now, if you can imagine your daughter is pregnant, and inside the fetus of your daughter, which will be your grandchild, inside that fetus, the eggs are forming, if it is a little girl, because they are born with all of their eggs. So the eggs are forming, and in the first 100 days, your grandchild's eggs are forming. But for the first maybe 50 days, your daughter probably would not know she was pregnant. She wouldn't take any precautions. But also for the first 100 days, and this is, again is what the scientists don't realise, is in the fetus or the embryo, there is no defence mechanism in the body, in the baby, to protect it from radiation. You have defence mechanisms of protein 53, nuclear core complex, that help fight radiation, antioxidants. The embryo doesn't have any of those. So what you are doing, if somebody is pregnant, you are irradiating a person who has no defence against microwaves. And again, a lot of people don't realise that when we are in that first 56 days, we are inside out. Our organs are on the outside of the body, because at a stage later on, after 100 days or so, we actually turn inside out again, so the skin is on the outside. So you have the organs on the outside, and they are taking all of the radiation and all of the damage. And this then will make the baby, or could make the baby, quite genetically damaged with other damage as well, brain damage, cellular damage, whatever damage. And it's not until that fetus is born and then grows up and has another baby that you may get that. So what we're doing here is we are really destroying many successive generations now, just by having Wi-Fi in schools. And it doesn't stop there. With children, now there are in you you have about 4,500 different biological structures making your body. Children have about 4,050 making their body. Now, children are not small adults. They are neurologically and physiologically immature. They have very little defense mechanism. Just to give you an idea, the blood-brain barrier that protects the brain from toxins, in a child that takes around 18 months to form. The nervous system in the body that controls all of our muscles, all of our movement, everything, that takes around 22 years to form properly. There are 122 different layers, if you like, of insulation around the wiring in the body that take 22 years. And it is known, it's laid down by a process called protein synthesis, and protein synthesis is known to be affected by microwaves. The immune system takes around 18 years to develop in a child, and again it is known that the first symptom of microwave syndrome is an attack on the immune system. So what we are really doing by unregulating or deregulating or having no regulation for microwaves, we are really putting a very, very great risk on every single generation. And if it were just me sitting here and nobody else in the world agreed, I might think, well, maybe I'm wrong. But in just the last few months, we know what I said to you about pregnancy and childbirth. We know that is right because there are mammalian species, cats, dogs, mice, rabbits. There are mammalian species who do not take 20 years to have a generation. They can do it in 1 year or 2 years. And vets have already started publishing papers about birth defects, lots of different birth defects, miscarriages, all sorts of problems with birth. And they specifically publish this is due to low-level radiation from microwaves. So we know it started happening with the animal kingdom. We know just in the last few months there is a 3,000% increase in cancers in children in China, a 21% increase that has been found in brain tumours, I think across Australia. There are several published papers now, and I think the most frightening is from the Russian National Radiation Committee with UNICEF, which is the children's charity. They work together. The Russians, with no disrespect to your country or anybody else's, I think the Russians are the world leaders in this. And they found, like what I said, central nervous system disorders in children, immune system disorders, brain capacity disorders. They published the whole thing, and it's all to do with children. So it could be well over 50% of the children in the world will suffer somehow unless somebody makes a stand against this organisation, this communications industry.
I look at the Danish society. I've been observing children for many years, and I've said to people something is very wrong here, and young children are, it seems like they're not getting very clever anymore. It seems like they are, like you say, the brain capacity, and they are very ill. They are ill from their being born into this world, and we were not ill when we were young boys or girls. We were out all day, playing all day, and having lots of energy. The youngsters today, they don't have very much energy, and you can see it's all there. It's all transparent.
I was a guest. There are two answers here. I was a guest of a king in Africa. I was his guest for 2 days, and I gave a lecture to the king and the royal family, and a teacher came and spoke at the same meeting. And he said childhood suicides and bad behaviour was almost unknown in Africa. Almost unknown. There was no misbehaviour, no suicides in Africa. He said, then we had a transmitter in the school, put up in the school playground, and they started to get mobile phones. He said, and within a couple of years, he said, in my class, every single child, everyone, was on Ritalin for bad behaviour. Everyone. And I can tell you why. Imagine, and I can really explain this with the brain. Imagine that when you go back to Denmark, you pick up the telephone book, and imagine you have a magic button. And you can push this button, pick up your telephone, push this button, and it will dial every single person in Denmark, okay? Now imagine, we're going to expand this, that you can push this button and you can dial every single person in the world all at once. Every telephone in the world all at once. You push the button and all these phone calls go out. That is the number of connections being made every second in the brain of a fetus. Every second, and not just a fetus as it is growing as a young adult. Every second those connections are being made. Now, if you expose a child to low-level microwave radiation, you are giving that brain up to 1,800 small electric shocks every second. You know, and this is why. You know, it is so delicate and so miraculous that is going on there, and it's not designed to have electric shocks go through it all of the time. And you are going to get connections that rely on electrical attractions and chemical attractions. They are not going to end up where they're supposed to end up, and this is why.
And then, you know, this year, 27th of May, the Council of Europe, they came with a resolution called 1815, which was actually, when I read this document, I said, this is very tough, because it was much more tough than the WHO precautionary principle.
Yeah.
And it came actually the day after we had a Danish politician saying they have made like a 2020 plan for the healthcare and so in Denmark, because they are having an agenda where the healthcare is going. And she was saying the day before, if I want to be part of this plan, I want more free wireless internet in all schools, on all educational institutions. And the next day this document came. And no one in the media in Denmark has talked about this one. No one in government, they have all got it, the ministers. No one is talking about it. And this really says that we must take the highest precaution about children, about schools, about everything you say.
There are two answers. Tell me if I talk too long and too much.
No, you talk.
I have been all over the world now in the last 12 years. All over the world. And I'm not boasting, I'm not showing off. When I go to a country, usually I always end up on television in news documentaries, news programs. I always have the press interviews and I give the public talks. Now, whenever I'm on television, national television, and in the press, or on the radio, live, usually on the radio, with people phoning in, I have one question that I ask in every single country, one question, and I say, would somebody from your government, their science department, or somebody from your Ministry of Health, or somebody from the industry, somebody who is very, very clever, would they come here on this television program or this radio program live with me and tell me one thing, just one, and then I can go home and be retired and happy. I said, I want the answer to one question. What is the safe level of microwave irradiation for an embryo, a fetus, a child, or a pregnant woman? What is the safe level? And in 12 years, in all of these countries, not a single scientist has come on television or the radio with me to say, here it is. Not one. And the reason they haven't is because there isn't one. There is no safe level. When you buy medicines, we have lots of medicines at our age. You know, when you have medicines, there is an adult dose and a children's dose, always. But with microwave irradiation, there is no children's dose. And there isn't anywhere in the world, and this is why.
In Denmark in 2003, when we started the debate about all these mobile towers and the wireless in schools and so on, of course the state and the government, they made this trick that they always do. Oh, we need more research, so we take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more years. And then in the meanwhile they said, oh, it will take 3 years to do this research. And then they forced almost all schools to install wireless at the same time. And I just said, is this common sense? You have just started an research to find out if it's dangerous, and then you put wireless in schools. Now we are 8 years after, and I believe some schools have started to wonder a bit because the pupils are very out of themselves.
You know, there are countries now, in France, areas of France now, they are spending, I think it's 124 million euros taking Wi-Fi out of schools. In Canada, there is a region now where they are taking Wi-Fi out of schools. So in the world, there are areas now where they realize that if they want a healthy future generation, because it's already been predicted that the cost of treating all of these children is far going to exceed the benefits and the money you get from the mobile industry, which tends to leave your country anyway. People don't realize that, and that may be a question you can ask later, is that any country that floods itself with the mobile industry is actually going to end up bankrupt. Coming back to the children, Wi-Fi is now coming out of schools, but it is and questions you can ask later, it is the military and the secret services who want this industry to succeed, and that is where the opposition comes from.
And when we talk about, you said Ritalin, so many children are on medication. And more people are coming on psychiatric medication. When I talk to many of those people in Denmark and around the world, I often say to them, please try not to use a mobile phone for a week. Your deck phone, disconnect everything. Go into the woods, sleep more, try to see how you feel. And they call me back and say, can this be true? And I say, I don't know what's true. What are you feeling? And You know, last year came, or actually it came this year. It's a report from a German professor called Hans-Ulrich Witschen about the size and burden of mental disorders and other disorders of the brain in Europe, 2010. And it's shocking because it's depression, it's sleeplessness, insomnia, it's all the things that has to do with microwave radiation.
Oh yeah, it's known. I mean, it could be as high as 85% the increase. Yeah, but as I say, it is the military and the secret services, and just corruption, in some cases, just ordinary corruption.
Yeah.
I've been to countries, and I've met professors, and in one country, a couple of they were livid. They said, in this country, they said, one person, without any consultation, without talking to anybody else in the country, they never spoke to the government or anybody, one person somewhere in the government signed to say the communications industry can come in, put up transmitters, put up towers, anywhere you like, without any consultation. He said, one person. He said, and we all knew it would be dangerous. And there is a knock-on effect to do with countries, and I don't know. It's a very complicated issue. Can I tell it to you? With countries, we're right for time.
Yes,
please. You may want to take this section off and show it to any kings or royal people. But I have, and I think this really sums up where we're going here. I have spoken to the most secret people in governments, including around 60 royal people, kings, queens, princesses, princes, top government officials, leaders of people, leaders of governments, around 60. And over the years, they started to tell me the same story. And I wish I were the one clever enough to think this up, but I wasn't. By the time I started to see other kings and queens, and I thought, I know what you're going to say, and true enough, it starts to come out. And some of these are where a transmitter was put right on top of the palace or beside the palace, and maybe people have got cancer and died inside the palace. And it has made them angry, and they want to talk to someone like me because they're not getting anywhere with their own governments. But the story they keep telling me, in bits and pieces, it was highlighted by one king, and we were, you okay there?
Yeah, okay, fine.
Okay. It was by one king, and I probably spoke to this king for 2.5 hours at a table, and we were talking like this. And he leaned forward in his chair, and he, in a very low voice, he said, Barrie, he said, I am losing the viability of my country. He said, and he was educated what we call Oxbridge, Oxford or Cambridge. And he said, he's far more clever than I am. And he said, I'm losing the viability of my country. We were talking about conversations. I never give names, but I can say, you know, I've been told this before and this before. And it seems to be a familiar story, and I'll tell you what it is. Usually the government, or somebody in the government, invites the communications industry in. They spread across the country. The government gets lots of taxes back, which everybody likes. But then you start to get illnesses, and the cost of health starts to creep up quite considerably. The next thing you notice is that your crops or your farm animals start to become sick, and you start to lose the food that you generate in your own country to feed your own country. So you've got sickness going up and you've got your food going down. Then you're pollinating insects, which are everything from ants to creepy crawlies to bees to bats. They start to disappear and become sick. And I've given many lectures, 2 at Glastonbury at the festival, on why pollinating insects, and those papers are on the internet. So he said, well, my people are becoming sick and I cannot afford the medications to help this number of people. My workforce is going down because they're sick. I have to start importing food that I would normally be growing. He said, and another thing, the industry come in, but most of my money in this country is leaving. Now imagine, he said, if I have 1 million mobile phone users and they all spend the equivalent of $1 American a day on phone calls, $1 a day, then every day $1 million is leaving my country to go to the 4 main providers who are outside my country. Admittedly, a little bit comes back because we take some in tax, and there are shops where they sell their things and people get paid, but most of the money, every day $1 million is leaving. Now we cannot sustain that financial loss over 20 years. He said, my illness is going up, which means I have to import drugs. My food is going down, my workforce is going down. He said, and no country can sustain this. He said, and then the very time I start to worry about this, and other royals have said this, he said, the countries that are causing this are the first people to come in with aid. They come in, their drug firms come in. But the price of this aid is that they either want to bring people into my country and have mining rights, or land rights, or immigration rights, or they want water or gold, whatever. But there is a price to pay when they come in offering aid. They offer drugs and medicines and food and everything I need, but I'm losing my country to the people who have come in. And he said, if I wanted to take over another country now, I wouldn't bother sending a fleet of bombers and military troops. I would just put up transmitters and wait. He said, and I am losing the viability of my country. I am locked into contracts I cannot get out of, that I did not sign, even as king, and I'm losing my country. And this is going on all over the world.
Exactly. It's the big corporate takeover.
It is a big corporate
It's
takeover.
like big mobile, big pharma, big cancer,
Yeah.
big money.
And
yeah.
this was, and I thought, well, okay, I've been told this before, but a farmer, a gentleman farmer that I was talking to, he said, I'm out of work now. And I said, well, why is that? And he said, there's a farm down there, he said, and I've worked there for the last 30, 40 years. He would just walk down to the farm and work. He said, and not so long ago, I was walking down to my farm, just an ordinary farm labourer. He said, and there was an American right in the middle of the road. This is Africa. Right in the middle of the road with a gun. And the American said to me, where are you going? And he said, I'm going to work. I work in that farm. And the American said, not anymore. This is our land now, and you cannot go there. And he said, but you know, this is my job, my livelihood. I have to feed my family, and I have to go to work. And he said, the American said, if you pass me, I will shoot you. I have the right to shoot you. Go back. And he had to turn back, and he's just lost his job, just like that. And this is the price. This is the price of moving these around. And when you look at the main countries, and I'm prepared to name them, we are looking at the Indonesians, who are putting out the industry, namely Japan. And if you look at what Japan wants, they have a little country, they need water, they need land, along with the Indonesians and the Americans. And the Americans want to dominate the world. So it makes sense. It makes sense that, you know, this is happening. It is a big corporate takeover, but it gets even more serious, and you can ask this question later by all means, because the reason that countries won't help you is the Secret Service. They will not let this industry fail. And if we have 85% of our children sick in 20 years' time, it is worth now the Secret Service having the benefits from all these people carrying cell phones. Does that answers your question a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, it's also, when we look at the Secret Service in Denmark, of course, they protect the industry, as you say. They protect the ministers, but the ministers don't serve the people, they serve upwards.
Would you like me to talk about this?
Yes, please.
Now, the Secret Service, they have what they think is like a gift from God, all right? If we go back, let's go back 10 years or 12 years. If your Secret Service said to, or in this country or any country, if they said to the people, now listen to us people, we are going to give you a little box. You must carry this little box everywhere you go, like a identity card. You must carry this everywhere you go. We will be able to listen to every single conversation you have, whether it is on or off. We will know everywhere you go because we can track it, whether it's on or off. If you put messages in, secret messages under your code where nobody can get at them, we will be able to go in, we have a device that will go in, unlock your code and read anything private, medical records, bank records, anything, any secret. So we will know everything about you, we will know everywhere you go, everybody you talk to, we will record every conversation. Now, there is a benefit to this, is that you will be able to push a few buttons and talk to people. Now, we're going to make all of you carry these, and you'll probably find most people wouldn't want one. But it's come out in such a way that they are wanted by everybody because they encourage you to be lazy. They are addictive because they entrain the brain. They are addictive. But the Secret Service know everything about everybody all of the time. Even business people, everybody. What the Secret Service doesn't know, or they may not know, is that up to 125 different countries can also do this. So up to 125 different people in different countries can also monitor all of the calls in Denmark. And that includes all of the people in the Secret Service. Even if it's coded, other countries can still monitor your Secret Service. They can monitor your royal family. They can monitor everybody in the government. And the idea behind this, or one of the ideas behind this, is the oldest spy trick in the book, and I know a lot about spies because I was involved with spies. The secret weapon of any spy is blackmail. Now, if you have, as we have, certainly in this country, if you have ministers or MPs or senior civil servants who are they turn their phones off and they think nobody can see me, and they have a mistress, or they like little boys, young boys or young girls, or paedophiles, whatever, or films, and they belong to a club or something like this, they can be blackmailed. They can be seen going in, everything can be heard, they can be seen coming out, and it makes them that the oldest trick in the book for spies is blackmail. And once you have somebody in that position who can be blackmailed, you have them. Yeah. And if we have a minister, and I go to the minister if I'm blackmailing and say, now look, you have a family, 3 children, I know you sleep with boys who are 12 years old, now I can expose you, or you can do this for me. And what your people don't know is that up to 150 different countries can be monitoring that. And your royal family. And it gets even worse, because I was involved in one spy case where, you see, it gets very complicated, this, but you can also send pulses into people's brains. And this is, not many people know this, if you send microwave pulses into people's brains, and it can be done from any tower, or any mobile van, or you can park a car outside somebody's house when they're sleeping and do it. It's very easy. And this has been known, it's been known a very, very long time actually. You can put pulses in people's brains, and there are around, I can give you a list of them, there are around 35 different pulses that I know of that can cause maybe 50 different neurological and physiological symptoms. Now, for instance, you can cause sexual aggression in men, suicidal tendencies, depression. You can interfere with the circadian rhythm of the eye and affect vision. You can affect with the natural rhythm of the heart, either the cyclotronic resonant frequency or the circadian rhythm of the heart. You can make any part of the body virtually become ill, and all of the mental processes. In fact, a paper was even published during the Cold War and now released under the Freedom of Information, where you could even fool psychiatrists with just by inducing paranoia and schizophrenia and other behavioural patterns that would fool psychiatrists just by microwave irradiation. And I can give you a list if you want one of all of the symptoms. So you have this, and it is not beyond the scope of any country to go to Denmark, and if you are a royal person or a minister or somebody, they can follow you with this, or even if you're an Olympic athlete and they want you to lose, to make you lethargic and lose interest. And I have known a case where Olympic people have been targeted by microwaves, and I have known a case where government ministers have been targeted, and I was involved in giving evidence. And I have also been involved in giving evidence where the military were targeted, and they acted totally out of character. So you can actually target people, and you can cause a country great embarrassment, or you can almost induce somebody not to think properly. So, you know, this is quite a successful weapon. Yeah.
Just to come back to some of the things you said, in '96, in '96 there came a document called the Terror Papers, and it talks about a genetic experiment, that we are part of a genetic experiment and so on. And then it says in the end of the document, it would be very good if we could implant people with a microchip, but it would not be very practical. And then they said, how can we make people carry a device voluntarily? And it says they must be betrayed. And on the next page, in the top of the page, it just says there's only one device available on the market today that matches the frequency of the brain, and that is called a cellular phone. And no matter if this document is false or whatever, I always read something, and if it fits in reality, it's good enough for me, because it shows a lot. When you mentioned the induction of psychiatric illnesses or mental states and so on, I have this old friend. She lives in a place in Denmark where one of the big producers of medication, these happy pills, so-called happy pills, they are placed. And once I walked by, I wondered how come they have this antenna inside their factory? I could see, and then I saw it was pointing somewhere. It was pointing to a hidden radar station, which I know where it is. And I just said, well, could it be that the big pharma inventing these medications know exactly what to induce in people to cause these illnesses, to create big money? And when we look at this report about the burden of the illnesses, like you said, take over a country, when I look at Denmark and see how people, I speak from the Danish perspective, when I see how people are on medication and 25% are depressive, and people are apathetic and not very workable, and they all just entertain themselves with the phones, the smartphones, so to speak, and the Facebook and the internet and so on. But they don't have the power anymore. They don't have the power to take action, to do something. It just confirms. It's actually very scary when we put it together.
Have you seen my list of all of the frequencies and what they can cause?
Not yet.
I'll get it for you. You're right. It's. I think. I mean, implants we know. There is lots of documentation on implants, which will transmit into the brain. And once implants were the earlier, they would transmit into the brain. Now you don't need implants because there are so many towers and hidden transmitters, even street lights can have transmitters in them, road signs, and there is a system, and it's been out about 10, 12 years now, called CELDAR. There are different types of CELDAR, but basically a computer, if they wanted to watch you, it's like radar, only with microwaves. Once the system is locked onto you, let's say from this lamppost, if there's a transmitter there, once it's locked onto you, the computer will take away anything that isn't moving, like buildings, and it will have your size, and then as you walk up the road and you get lost from this transmitter, the next one will pick you up, and then the next one, and they can follow you everywhere. And if they want to, they can also send a beam into you, a microwave beam. And you may think that is a bit far-fetched, but there is documentary evidence, lots of it, to show that the women at Greenham Common here during the Cold War, they were microwaved by the American base and made to feel depressed and suicidal and have cancer. We used them on the Catholics in Northern Ireland. We would do whole streets, and that has been documented and was brought up, and the MPs complained about it. So we used them in Northern Ireland, the Americans used them on the Catholics, the Russians used them on the Americans. They have been developed over 60 years now to perfection. I think I probably have the most comprehensive list in the world of pulse frequencies and what they can cause, because I looked into this. But you're right, it's where this started out, maybe as we can keep an ear on our people and see what they're up to. Different organisations are now getting new ideas and making new devices, and they're not coordinating with each other. And it's, you know, one department is developing germ warfare, microwave germ warfare. Another one is developing how to eliminate MPs and royal families. You know, if you don't want a royal family, it's very simple to get rid of them. And what they don't know, even in this country, our royal family are given little devices to carry, which they're told, in case they're kidnapped. So we will know exactly where they are. But they could also be transmitters going into the royal family. They may not be, but they could be. So if you have a country where the government or the people who run the country do not want the royal family anymore, they're very easy to get rid of and very easy to find out what they're doing, what they're saying, any royal secrets. It's all being stored and logged, and the royal family have no idea usually what is being kept about them, on them, and maybe they have secrets, and all of these are being recorded, everything.
Talking about the royalty in Norway, I told you I have this Norwegian book with me, but he wrote, it came out here in autumn 2011, and he wrote about the Norwegian king. They had this summer residence where they spent a lot of time actually during all the year to relax and so on. And they put this space station inside the building, and it was radiating 700 times more than normal. And no one would take responsibility how it got there, no one knew. And then they found out it was the biggest mobile phone company in Norway, which is actually Scandinavian, or actually perhaps even becoming worldwide. And now it's removed, but he got cancer, he got heart trouble, he was operated, and all his staff got sick as well. It was all there. And he actually was a king that was really serving as a king.
Yep.
Not trying to corrupt anything. He was really a real king.
He's not the first one that has happened to. Not the first.
No. But it just confirms what we are.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's happened. And you know, when I go to countries and I talk, I often get a message in my hotel, usually a secret message, saying, you know, we want to talk to you, and a big car turns up and I jump in and I think, well, someone's going to shoot me in the back of the head any minute now, and I end up in a palace or somewhere, and we have a very good discussion, and then I'm taken back. But there is a lot that the royals do not know, that you know, they're kept. And again, you're looking at the destruction of a royal lineage, because if the children are being microwaved, if they come up to the royals and they say, you know, you need extra protection, and they increase the power, what they're really doing is making the future generations very, very sick. Or they can make them mentally retarded, so they cannot rule. And maybe, I don't know, somebody else wants to take over the country for whatever reason. You know, I can't be bothered with world domination, but some people may have a reason to take over the country and control it.
I've been wondering for many years, what is it that is pushing all these technologies? Then I talked to Professor Ole Johansson from the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, and he said to me he was at a European meeting, where a European Commission, where he asked, what is the need for all these technologies? And then the European guy, he said to him, well, that's probably the most intelligent question ever asked here. And then Ole Johansson, he said, well, what do you mean about that? There was no need. It was only to generate maximum profit.
Mm.
So it actually used as a cash cow to generate enormous amount of profit, but then again, of course, also to the surveillance stuff and all this. But when we talk about big corporate takeover, world takeover and so on, we have to look at big banks, because there's a lot of money involved in this, and how come they can make all these commercial, it's full pages every day, and people are becoming so much taken over. Barrie, what is your knowledge about how actually to mind control people, or how to control people efficiently with commercials? Do you have any expertise in that? How they might use different kind of, like, how they can, how to say, manipulate
the brain.
Yeah.
But there are different ways. First of all, this industry now, talked about money, financially, this industry is now the most powerful on the planet. The mobile industry is the most powerful on the planet. It has so much money that it can even tell some governments what they will and won't do. It is a very powerful industry. On top of all of that, it is an information gathering industry. So somebody is gathering all of the information, and certainly the Americans are gathering it, because if you think of Google, that is an American-based company, and everything usually is on Google. People don't realize that even ordinary telephone calls are recorded and stored. Ordinary telephone calls. I mean, people like me, I would imagine my telephone here, there must be at least 5 different organizations listening to everything I say, and watching me everywhere I go. So we're dealing with an incredibly powerful organization. Now, in terms of there are different reasons for in training somebody's brain. It could be just to experiment. For instance, we know that 6.66 pulses a second going into the brain. That can cause sexual aggression. We have a list, I have a list here. It may be the most comprehensive in the world now, I don't know. But some of the things, you can change the heart, the sleep pattern, you can induce hallucinations, amnesia, drowsiness, depression, visual distortions, hearing distortions. People will actually hear voices. It's called auditory hallucinations. Very easy to do. And if you go to a psychiatrist and say, I keep hearing these voices saying that, you will end up in an asylum, especially if the voices are telling you to do something illegal or criminal. And it's very easy. Auditory hallucinations are very easy. You can induce anger, manic behaviour. Here we have, I haven't got my glasses up, auditory visual hallucinations I've said, irritability, the loss of ability to make decisions, and so they go on. There are quite a few of them here. Hyperactivity, especially with children, anxiety, but
when you said lose ability to take decisions,
yeah.
I remember in 2006 in Denmark, it was on the national radio. It was just said once, but it says that mobile phone radiation disconnects the ability to take decisions.
Oh, yes.
And it was never said again.
Yeah, it does. Yes, it can lose you the ability to make decisions. But this was known. I mean, this document here is published. By 1976, it was published here by the United States government. There were some 8,500 research papers by then proving all of this. Military papers, government papers, experimental papers, and they published it. They published it. And here is a list of all of the physical and mental illnesses you can get. Be quiet. Of all the illnesses you can get from microwaves at cell phone powers and Wi-Fi powers. So cell phone and Wi-Fi and in all of the illnesses you can get.
I have a movie here, I don't know if you have watched it, but it's called Control Factor. It actually illustrates what you just told and how it can be done, and it might be a little over-exaggerated, but today it's done wireless. You don't need to implant anything in people, you can just do it by frequencies. But, some of the things that I find very strange is that so few people are able to connect the dots. Because I've been observing people, and I have observed since 2003 when we started the debate, that people have become more and more disconnected. That they don't seem to function or think coherently anymore, and that's even a part of mind control, you can say, if you can disconnect the thinking.
The CIA actually patented some of these devices, patented them, and I have the patent numbers somewhere. And the CIA and the Canadian government were taken to court once for this. It took 50 years, but they were taken to court. And they lost by the people who said, they have been experimenting on us. But like our government, it takes about 50 years to take a government to court, because by then most people are dead. All the people who made the decisions are retired or either dead. The victims are usually dead, and there's very little compensation, and people are not really interested 50 years on anyway. But they have, both this government and the Canadian government, and probably the Americans, they have a very good delaying strategy for about 50 years to take them to court.
Doesn't that mean that we're reaching the point where the 50 years now, if you look back from the 60s,
oh, yes.
Yeah, it's about time now.
There was a case very recently, and I was involved in this, that they wanted to use me. Just as simple. When I was in the military in the very early 60s, a notice came round inviting all young, fit, we were all young and we were all fit, personnel to take part in flu injections. They wanted to give us a flu injection so we wouldn't get the flu in the military. And you were offered a weekend in London on full pay, an extra weekend off in London. And I thought, oh, this sounds good, I'll have some of this. But my commanding officer read it and tore it up and told me not to be so stupid. But that was in the 60s, and only 2 years ago, the survivors took our Ministry of Defence to court 50 years on, because they were nothing to do with flu. It was all sorts of viruses and chemicals, and they wanted to see, they needed lots of young people that they could experiment on, young, fit, healthy people, and where best to get them from than the forces. And they wanted to see what would happen. Most of them died. The survivors that still had cancers and viral infections got the Ministry of Defence to court, and they won. But again, there were only a few survivors. And we are now seeing that it is another experiment, exactly the same as that, with Tetra. Tetra Airwave is another experiment where they are looking for cancer. They are looking to see how the frequency affects the brain. It is totally undeveloped, not tested, and Tetra is an experiment. And in one of the government scientists' documents, to date, it is written that now up to 7,000 officers today could have slow-growing brain tumours, the gliomas or acoustic neuromas. Up to 7,000 could have very slow-growing tumours that take 20, 30 years to develop. So it won't be until these officers, be it ambulance, fire brigade, police, MI5, MI6, secret services.
Buses, trains.
Yep.
Have it in Denmark.
Yep. It won't be until they are retired that the brain tumours will show themselves. But it is an experiment, and I've got all the documentation that says that it can cause this. And not only can it cause this, it can cause severe personality changes, lots of types of severe personality changes, including severe aggression and bad behaviour. And it's just an experiment, and all of these things are being monitored as an experiment. And it is illegal. It's illegal. Any human experiment is illegal because of the Nuremberg Treaty. And I've published this. At the end of the war, you don't mind me talking about the war?
No.
At the end of the war, when the Nuremberg trials were being held in Germany, it was agreed, all the major powers agreed then and signed what was known as the Nuremberg Treaty. And it says that no human being anywhere may be experimented upon at all without his or her full consent. And before they give consent, they must have a full knowledge of the trial. They must have a full knowledge of all of the risks, and they must have the ability to say no without any fear of losing their job or anything. And not one police officer, like I said to you, with one country, one person invited the whole communications industry in, one person for the police force signed to say, yes, we will have this. And one person agreed that all of the officers could take part in this without even talking to them. One person.
I know a friend in Denmark, he serves as an ambulance driver, he's a paramedic also, and they have just been installed Tetra in the cars and so on, and every time they leave the car they need to take the radio on, and he has measured it, and he says it's extreme, it's 7-8 times more radiation than the safety levels, and he says the antennas is inside the car, of course, and when I go around in cities and see these Tetras antennas 70 centimeters and so on, and I listen with a microwave detector, it's like beep, constantly, and you know, I sense myself, I feel myself, and I can feel when I come into these radiation areas, because I feel I get more left brain, you can say, more mental and more like suppressed or more cynical.
The Tetra, in fact, I'm hoping to go to court this June. You know, this is really up to date, and if you have anybody in your emergency services, show this bit to them. Now, we had, I wrote 2 of the safety reports on Tetra for the police, and in both reports I condemned it as too dangerous. The government overruled me and said, no, this is going out. And my reports are on, one of them is on Google, the other one is on something called WikiLeaks. Have you heard of WikiLeaks?
Yeah.
One is on there. We had riots here in London when called the G20, when the world leaders, financial leaders, it was 2.5 years ago I think, we had riots in the street. And police officers, we had a police officer who beat a man to death on the pavement with a stick. Other police officers were very violent. The rioters were very violent. But when you look at the film, you see we have big police vehicles and they are transmitting into the officers and into the rioters. And the police here do what they call corralling. They block the path of all of the rioters so they can't leave. And then they start to close in, like you round up cattle. And they have all of the people in a little area. And then they are beaming down in them, as well as the police. Now, when I looked at the film, you have, if you think of this, you have the police officers who, before the riots, are sitting in the back of a metal van. They are all transmitting into each other. Now, they all exceed the dose, the microwave dose. If you are with Tetra, if you have it on for more than 6 minutes, if you are near 4 other people, and there are 12 in the back of the van, if you have a metal helmet, you are exceeding the dose. And all of the officers exceeded the dose. Now, one of the things you get if you exceed the dose, you can be induced to show excessive violence. And that's just not the police officers, that's the rioters. And what we have here, we have rioters being taken to court and sentenced. We have police officers being taken to court and sentenced. But not one person from the government that knows Tetra can cause this, not one person from the government has offered one piece of paper in evidence to say these people could be innocent. And some of these could be facing life in prison. Not one person from the government has come forward to say this is experimental. We know from our own documents this can cause aggressive violence, aggressive behaviour, severe personality disorder, and if you're overdosed it's going to exacerbate that. So not one person from the government has come forward, not one person from the Police Federation has come forward, and they know this can happen because our Police Federation actually wrote in a document, we know this happens to our police officers, but as it's up and running, we can't do anything about it. And they're the union. So we have this situation where the Police Federation have not told the police they can use this as a defence, and they are paid by the police to represent them. The government have not told them, and we have the officers and the rioters or demonstrators being charged. And I wrote to the High Court judge and I said, this is a miscarriage of justice. This is not fair, because you should have the defence for the people, and if necessary, the government scientist and the Police Federation should be in the court. And this was accepted by a legal person who's put it onto another legal person now, and I'm hoping that this is going to be used in court as a defence, because the people that have gone to jail, and we're talking a lot, shouldn't be there necessarily, and this is provable. You see, it is, all you have to do is reenact the day, take an EEG, an ECG before, reenact their exposure and take it afterwards. It's easily proven. So I'm now hoping to get this brought up in court for one of the big trials, and have everybody that's gone to jail released. And this is where I am at the moment. And it's, you know, and it's not just this country. When I wrote to the judge, I said that in every country I go to, I am always approached by somebody from the police, the ambulance, to say, since my officers started using Tetra Airwave, you know, their behaviour has changed, they're losing sleep, they're becoming sick, they're becoming angry, they're hitting their wives, you know, the whole thing. So
the man I know in Denmark, he says he's very active and has written to all his the ones above him and the union and so on, and they say, oh, they will look into it later, and then they keep coming back saying, no, it's safe, there's no problem. And that means they are totally lying, of course.
They are lying, and they can't say it's safe because it's an experiment, and the experiment doesn't finish until 2018. So they can't say it's safe. It's a long-running experiment.
In 2007, actually in 2007, I observed that a lot of things have changed, and people's mental health has really been degraded since, and even people, you know, it's like the human side of people have been removed, so they are very dehuman in a way.
Yeah.
react very strange. But I don't know if it was in 2007 or 2006 that someone found out that the state, the Danish state, had sold or made a deal with Motorola about the Tetra emergency net of Denmark, and was really about it was really what you can call a toilet deal or something in Danish. Can you do you know what is going on all around the world with this?
Oh yeah, absolutely. As I said, and I've published this, and if you Google my name, one is on Google. My confidential report for the Police Federation is on Google, and my highly confidential report, I'm told, is on something called WikiLeaks. That is on there. And we know, and it's published, the Americans want everybody to use Tetra because they can listen in to all your secret services, even the coded bits they can listen in. But it's not just the American government listening in. I think it's probably to do with where the Americans want to understand. The Americans have two big worries. One is if they have to challenge China, because China is a major power against America. The other is Europe. If all of Europe got together, or the European countries, it is a formidable force for America. And what better way than for the Americans to understand what is going on with, there are some, in each country, some 53 organisations that use Tetra. Coast Guard, Customs, Police, Secret Services, and the Americans can listen in to every single conversation. In all countries, they know exactly what is going on. So if it came to war, and goodness knows what happens in this world, you know, one minute you're fighting somebody, the next minute you've joined and you're fighting somebody else. If it came to war, the Americans would have all of your military secrets, all of your government secrets in every country. And you wouldn't be such a threat because they would have the advantage. They already know everywhere and everything.
In 2008 in Denmark, I was reading a document from the telecom industry.
Yeah.
And there was a guy I had been like pushing very much. Yeah, he has a sad function to play. But he wrote somewhere, and that I stumbled about. He says, it's the state that has a vision about the mobile and wireless society. And I said, it's the state that has a vision. That's why they say there must be 98% coverage all over the country.
Yeah.
But then I start to wonder, I say, okay, the state sells these licenses for the mobile phone radiation system. They get a lot of money. They rent out positions for the mobile towers and get a lot of money. They put scientists on a job to find out whether it's dangerous or not. And they evaluate themselves.
Yep.
That all other reports are useless. It's only their own scientists that know the truth.
Yep.
Is that's what we call inhability, or how do you say it in English? When you are not, they cannot play all roles, but the state does.
Oh yeah, but they have a secret. They have a secret as well. There are different safety levels. Now, there is a safety level held by the Russians and some other countries, and they look at how the waves interact with the cells. So what we're looking at is things called rectification, interruption to the cyclotronic resonance frequency, the circadian rhythm, in vibration of the water-bound layers, things like that, how cells, they change their vibrations and they change the conductivity through the cell. Now that happens at very, very low levels. In fact, it can happen at any level below freezing because the waves still travel. And if you have a safety level based on that, then in terms of units, ordinary microwatts per centimetre squared, in terms of units, a safe level, you're probably looking at the Bioinitiative report. We're talking about sort of electrically induced phase transition, where the waves change phases. A safe level is about 0.2 of 1 unit, about 1/5 of 1 unit. Up until last year, we allowed 10,000 units because we only look, along with other European countries, we only look at how warm you feel. So when the scientists do their experiments and they say this is perfectly safe, what they're saying is children could play Ring-a-Ring-a Roses around a transmitter all day and never exceed the maximum dose because they wouldn't get too warm.
Only from running around.
Only from running around.
Yeah.
So when the warm level is 10,000, but the safe level is 1/5 of 1 unit. But last year, the industry in this country, and we have just got rid of probably the most corrupt government ever, where I think over 60% of our parliament were found to be thieves or liars or corrupt. The last thing they did was to give the mobile industry permission to triple the amount of power. And for Tetra now, they've actually made an application to the government to have no safety limit at all. No limit. No safe limit.
Earlier this year in Denmark, the politicians they agreed that we should have 100% coverage, indoor and outdoor, within a year. That was in February 2011. So
yeah.
That's the same situation.
Yep.
It's all over.
Yep. So there are people very, very high up, and I'm not talking royals, I'm talking, there are people very, very high up in government or civil service, very high up, who have a lot of power, and they are telling the people below them what to do. And I can give you an example. In our parliament, it took a couple of years for our MPs to bring, going back to children, a case of children. A survey was carried out around Europe, and it was found that where transmitters are in school playgrounds, they found 200 schools, 200, where there were cancer clusters among the children and the staff. 200. In this country, some of the cancer clusters were 11, 12 children, all under the age of 11. And MPs took this to Parliament, a group of them, and they listed all of these cancer clusters in schools, mentioned all of the ones abroad, blamed the mobile industry. They said the mobile industry are lying. They are telling lies to parents and schools, saying these are harmless radio waves, lots of things. And being uncooperative, putting transmitters up without permission and then not taking them down. And at the end, the minister who was given his what to say just stood up and said, we are within international guidelines, safe guidelines, and sat down, and that's it.
But then we come back to when we talk about guidelines, we have the IGNIAP, which is
well, that is it. It's the same.
It's the same, and it's all done by the same scientists. They're all interconnected.
Yeah, and this is because of this.
Yeah.
This is this document here.
Yeah.
This one. Now, this, I think this first sentence is the most dangerous sentence written since the declaration of war in 1939. This one sentence at the top from the American government.
Yeah.
And what it says, and I'll paraphrase it, it says all of these illnesses are known to occur from low-level microwave irradiation, the same as you get with all phones, all towers and Wi-Fi. They're saying you will get all of this. But then they are saying Western governments must not be strict with safety levels because it will affect what the military want to do.
Exactly.
And it will also affect industrial profit.
Yes.
It's exactly what they're saying here.
That's what you know. Robert Becker, the doctor.
Yep.
He got sacked from that when he said that.
Yeah, and this is where IGNIAP came in.
Yeah.
They said, okay, we will do what the American government wants. Instead of having a safe level that they have in Russia and other countries, we will look at just how warm you feel, and our level will be up there. And this is why.
And you know, when we talk about IGNIAP, we have to talk about WHO as well, because those two goes to bed together.
It's the same people.
But the WHO is really a private organization founded by David Rockefeller. It's really a money machine.
Now, with the WHO, I was talking to one government, a few years ago now, and the gentleman following me was Michael Rapaccioli. He was following me.
Yeah.
And when you spoke to this government, you had to speak under oath to this government. As you do with some of them, you have to swear that you're under oath. And what Michael Rapaccioli followed me, and you were also protected from prosecution. There was no slander. You could say what you wanted. If it was the truth, you could say what you wanted. And when I was speaking, I said, I do not trust this gentleman who is following me, Michael Rapaccioli, because I believe he is taking money from the mobile industry and he is representing the World Health Organization. And when he came to speak, he was asked, are you taking money? And he admitted he was in the payroll on a retainer of the mobile industry as a consultant, and it was his hourly rate is more, I think, than my year's old age pension, of colossal amounts of money. But when he was representing the World Health Organization, he was also representing the mobile industry, and he was being paid. He lost his job. He now works with the University of Rome. He fought a case for the mobile industry against the Vatican, where he lost when the Vatican were transmitting and all the children and people getting cancer. He lost that case. I think he's still with the University of Rome. But it is this IGNIAP, the WHO, and our government scientists here, it's the same people that sit on the same benches. And that this is one big boys club. And between them, and I've said this publicly, between them, and I said this in Birmingham about 8 years ago in a public conference, I said these people, this small group, and it's a very small group of people, I said they will be responsible for more suffering and death in peacetime than all of the terrorist organisations in the world that have ever existed added together. And they will be.
In Sweden we have a Swedish journalist, she's called Mona Nilsson. This book is in Swedish.
Yep.
But she has spent the last 8 years writing 2 books, and she got this Professor Anders Albom from Karolinska. He was thrown out here in May from this EIRC under WHO.
Yep.
Yeah, and she has come forward with so much things that he was actually thrown out because he was director of a company working for the telecom industry, together saying that it's safe and so on, so on, so on.
Mm.
Yeah,
but
and it was WHO who had I think was in 2004 they removed the precautionary principle that was there to protect the people.
Yep. So it's the same people sitting on each. Now, who is controlling them or who they're reporting to, I don't know. But they will be responsible.
When we talk about who's controlling them, we can call it the organization just to have a thing to refer to. But when we look at WHO, it's founded by Rockefeller. He gave them the building, the UN building in New York and so on. And it's the WHO that comes forward and they say to the National Health Board, you have to say this. We don't know yet. We will put more science up. And the Interphone study they are discussing from, and they cannot agree, and they agree, and they cannot agree. And then they came out in May, 31st of May this year, saying that it might be a carcinogen, the radiation. And then they have said here 2 months ago or 1 month ago, no, it might not be true anyway, and it's all the confusion making, doubt making.
Yep, and this is deliberate. In fact, our biggest cancer charity in this country, its biggest funder is the mobile industry. And the man who runs it says very repeatedly, mobile phones are safe. And they are the biggest funder to the Cancer Institute.
When we talk about cancer, that's also why I do this work, because I think Denmark has a very bad reputation when we talk about cancer. We have this guy called Christopher Johansen in Denmark working for the Danish Cancer Institute.
Not Ollie Johansen.
No, Christopher Johansen.
Okay, yeah.
And he's really, he has been lying and lying and lying for so many years. And the Danish Cancer Institute is very well known for deliberately lying and placing misinformation. And it came out some years ago that the Danish Cancer Institute had actually lost a lot of money in playing on with stock market. And the Swedish Cancer Organization had invested in big tobacco.
Yeah. The World Health Organization, it was found out in this country, they re-diagnosed brain tumours as endocrine cancers, so they wouldn't show up on the cancer statistics. And we have, in this country, when it was last looked, we had 10,000 brain cancers not showing on the statistics. 10,000.
That's a lot.
Mm.
The Danish Cancer Institute has been used like a whitewashing machine, I think George Carlos said. And they made this study and they took out the biggest groups, so there was actually only someone back who used the mobile phone once a month or something that could not be really any danger. But it seems like every time there comes a new study on the market, so to speak, or someone is publishing, the Danish Cancer Institute comes forward, says something, and it goes in the media all over the world.
Yeah, there are two things here. Now, the first thing is all of these people, the industry, they do not have to show this is safe. They only have to do one thing. All they have to do is cause confusion. That's all they have to do.
And they do that very well.
And they do that very well. And it's very easy to cause confusion because our universities are desperate for money, absolutely desperate. And the biggest contributor to university research is the government. The biggest contributor. And it's not just me. We had a minister and an American senator has also said that we've reached the stage now where governments can buy the results that they want. They can buy the results that will cause confusion. And that's all you have to do. And a good example is the interphone study that you've just mentioned. Now, this huge study, the interphone study, it actually showed increased cancers. Then the statisticians moved in. So they eliminated everybody under the age of 30, which are the main users. Everybody over the age of 59 was eliminated. They eliminated everybody who uses more than one phone. So you have one for business, one for pleasure. So they eliminated those. They defined heavy use as, I think, something like 2 hours a week, something like that. And they ended up with something like just 16% of the population. And then when you spread that 16% over the whole country and say how many of these people are getting cancer, you get to the point where they ended up saying that mobile phones not only don't cause cancer, but they prevent it, because people using them got less cancer. And that's how you do it. You only have to cause confusion.
It's a game of statistics.
It's a game of statistics, yep. That's all they have to do.
Yeah. People should, by now, they should be knowing that governments, sometimes, you know, I play with the word government because it's actually put together, you can say, to govern, and then meant, and meant could be mental, so it could actually mean mind control.
Yeah, I think it's above government.
Yeah.
I think the ordinary member of parliament, do you have members of parliament in Denmark? I think the ordinary member of parliament representing the public, they are trying to fight this. They are told by ministers what they will and will not say, and it is somebody telling the ministers what they and will not say, and it is these people who are controlling.
I see it as, when we look at the pyramid, I just came to this conclusion some weeks ago, that when you have the ministers they go to the Queen, and they get like a stamp in the neck. Now you serve this part. And the other members of parliament, they try to serve the population, but they have no real power, only the ministers, because they serve upwards. They get the benefits from serving the top.
Now, this could be, and I don't know, it could be, if you are giving royalty, if the ministers have to go to royalty, it could be, and it is certainly possible, with pulsed radiation to control royalty. It could be that the royalty are being manipulated. It could be.
But it's kind of our constitution that when a new government comes in, they have to see the Queen or King.
Yeah, the same here. Same here, but the Queen, our Queen, actually can't influence Parliament at all. She's not allowed to.
No.
I mean, the Queen, really, she's just a queen. That's it.
Yeah.
She can't influence. Parliament tell her what they are going to do and what they are going to say. She can't actually stop. She can't actually influence it. She's not allowed to.
It might be a little different. I don't know. It's all the same kind of show, you can say, going on. But you know, when you look at the people attending the Queens in Denmark, we have the chairman of the biggest energy company and mail company, and SAS, the Scandinavian airline system, the flight company. And you see those people, and they are interacting with like the biggest bank family of Europe, the Rothschilds and so on. So it starts to crumble very much that they are all perhaps they are all controlled by the bankers when it comes down to it.
It may be. I mean, the question to ask is who benefits? Who benefits from people being sick in countries, whole generations becoming sick? Who benefits?
The one who owns the big pharma.
And it is the one, yes, the one who owns the industries.
Yeah.
The pharmaceuticals, the communications, they are the only people who will benefit. Yeah. And the countries that they are based in will benefit.
But if we then talk about, if we look at a global takeover, and we look like that they don't care about the nationalities, they see it as a supranational, that they want the world power. And when you talk about the tetra all over, and the tetra, and how it's done, it might be an attempt to, some are saying, you know, some call it conspiracies, some call it whatever, but we look at how society is and what is going on. And it might look like that the populations are being run down, and many are dying actually from illnesses. It's called a slow kill, perhaps, these methods being used. And then it's part of the depopulation also, if the female cannot get any more children.
Depopulation. I mean, what would be better than having a smaller population totally under your control?
That's a slave race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It may, I don't know, it may be.
Yeah, that's their goal, really.
So, yeah, this is where we're going anyway. And if you can manipulate the royals who control the countries, it's a bit like at the end of the war when the Americans, when Japan surrendered, they kept the emperor because the emperor controlled the people. And the Americans managed, if they could control the emperor, they would control the country. Yeah. And here, if you control the royals, you control the country. Which is simple. I mean, the first thing the mobile industry do when they move in is they go for the top people.
Yeah. There was a CIA research director in 1972. He said that mind control means a world where you can control every thought, every feeling, every observation, and every need by electrical stimulation of the brain.
Oh yeah.
And then, you know, I'm just the man on the floor, and I said, well, when you put this mobile phone to your head and you have a mobile phone tower, and everything you do today has to do with electrical devices.
Yep.
Well, could it be that we are seeing a global mind control actually program being rolled out through the wireless?
I don't think so, and I'll tell you why. Because it may be in the Western world, but you have opposition like Russia. They also know that this can happen, and they will not let America or Europe dominate Russia.
But what if it is Russia doing it?
Well, Russia may be doing it on its own people, but
they are very clever. They are very far.
They're the world leaders.
Yeah.
But they have a similar one, but it's not. The Americans can reach anywhere in the world with HARP.
Yeah. In Norway as well, they have a HARP. And Sweden also.
Yeah. The Americans can actually bounce waves off the ionosphere anywhere around the world with HARP. I can't verify that this is true. I know some of it is true, but I can't verify all of it. I only know what I've been told. And I was in Australia. I was a guest in Parliament of one of the ministers. Lee Rhiannon, Green, a lovely lady, Green minister. And I spent a couple of days with her talking and giving her documents. And it's one of these big black car turns up at the hotel. I had a very mysterious phone call from a government official. And like you, I know when I'm talking to people who know what they're talking about. You know, if somebody didn't know, I would spot it in about 30 seconds just by the words they used. I had a phone call from a chap saying, we need to talk, and we need to talk very, very privately. Fine, okay. So I go down, big black car, and he takes me off into the night, and he takes me down into the basement of a building, and it's quite dark, and it was where he worked, quite dark, and again I thought this is going to be the bullet in the back of the head, you know. But we sat down and we spoke, and he said, I'm very, very scared, Barrie. He said, we've reached the situation now where with HARP, that can reach anywhere in the world, he said, years ago, and I knew this to be true because I was told it before, you know if somebody has a heart attack and their heart stops, you can put the things on it, go dunk, and it starts the heart. He says, we now have bacteria, as you have, like with the great plagues going back the years, bacteria can lie dormant in the soil for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they can be reactivated. We know sometimes you get grave diggers, if they are digging a grave that was a grave before and somebody was buried there from the plague, sometimes you can even get bubonic plague, which is now easily treated with penicillin. But the bacteria can come back with the frequency of light. And he said, what we've got now is government scientists, and he said, I'm very scared about this. We have government scientists who have developed frequencies that can regenerate the bacteria from its dormant state into its live state. He said, now think of the implications. He said, if I want to come to your country, I can just drop bacteria. Let's say I want to cause a wheat devastation, or cattle, a disease in all of your cattle. He said, all I've got to do is come to some of your farms, walk over the farms, drop the bacteria, and come back. Then, just using the frequency, you can, from HARP, you can bounce the same frequency around the planet, or use towers. You can reinstate, activate the bacteria, and you have mad cow disease, you have wheat disease, you have tree fungus. He said you can devastate a country's economic value at the push of a button. He says you can bring total devastation to the farming or the livestock of trees, whatever. You can totally devastate a country. And he said it can get even worse, because inside dormant bacteria you can have dormant virus. And when the bacteria come to life, the virus will come to life. And virus can stay dormant longer than bacteria. He said, so we've got to the stage now where we're into microbiological warfare from things like HARP, mobile towers, and we can induce any form of bacterial warfare in any country by the use of this system. He said, and it is so easy now, and this is actually up and running. He said, it is so easy now to bring total devastation and economic ruin to any country by microwaving it and bringing the bacteria to life.
Can you say what nationality, without mentioning a name, just what nationality was he?
He was Australian,
Okay.
but he got the research, I think he got the research from a joint venture between the British and the American governments.
Yeah.
And there was actually something on the web, so it wasn't secret at the time. There was something on the web that somebody sent to me where it says we can now regenerate yeasts by electromagnetic pulses. We can regenerate yeast, and in yeast you can put bacteria, and in bacteria you can put viruses. So it was actually on the internet first, but he was Australian, and it was British scientists and American scientists doing this. So it is known, and this is very scary, where, you know, if you can bring about the devastation of a total country, you know, and then of course you go in with your aid.
It makes plague look like nothing.
It makes plague look like nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah? You know, I mean, and I often wonder when you hear the news and you think, well, there's a whole big, all of our beef a few years ago was wiped out with mad cow, what we call mad cow disease. And in other countries like Denmark, Sweden, so on, whole forests all of a sudden fall victim to a disease. And I think, well, is this normal, you know, or was it deliberate? And of course it is international finance now, and if you can cause this, you can go in with the aid. But it's certainly up and running.
One thing that, when we talk about microbiological warfare and all these things,
Right.
when we talk about what is going on in the world and we are all being manipulated and there's a lot of things going on, we come to the big thing about CO2. Because the CO2, the Kuiper,
Yep.
that's probably the biggest bomb, or one of the biggest bombs.
Mm.
What have you got to say about microwaves and emissions and CO2?
A couple of years ago, there are 3 papers published about this. I think I've referenced 1 or 2 of them because they all really come up with the same. And what they now say is the biggest polluter on the planet now, by far, is the communications industry. The biggest polluter. It exceeded the aviation industry a few years ago. So in other words, all of the exhaust fumes from all of the aeroplanes in the world is now exceeded by the carbon dioxide produced by the communications industry. And it's produced because you have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of transmitters all over the world. They all need power. All the mobile phones need power. All the Wi-Fi sets need power. All the gadgets need power, and all this power has to be generated to feed the industry. And the more the industry put out Wi-Fi, not only are they contributing to warming the atmosphere, but they are increasing this carbon footprint, as it's called. So the mobile industry is the greatest polluter on the planet today, the greatest polluter, and that is documented. And the funny thing is, with this government, and I think our governments are still corrupt, this government was talking just a few months ago, and it was coming over the BBC saying that motorists will be charged another 7 or 8 pence a litre for petrol to cut down the motoring and to help pay for all of the carbon going into the atmosphere. And yet you hear nothing, absolutely nothing, anywhere in the world against the mobile industry in terms of pollution.
And no one talks about it. No one ever reflects.
People are scared. They are the biggest polluters in the world. They are now responsible for more animal suffering and death in the world. They are responsible for the catastrophic events in nature, like trees dying, the pollinators not pollinating plants. They are devastating the natural nature of this planet. And that is written. And it's also published that the total cost of devastating this environment, these ecosystems, I think it's something like $33 trillion a year or something it could cost when all the damage is fully done. But this one industry, I think, is going to cause more damage to this planet than anybody has ever managed to do in any war or by any global destructive mechanism. This industry is doing it without opposition, and it's going to cause all of this. And the evidence is not just from me as a government person who was trained in this. It's from veterinary surgeries, scientists, environmental scientists. It's coming in from everywhere that this industry is responsible.
Could it be, you know...
Could I just add, sorry,
Yeah,
I'm being
of
very
course.
rude interrupting. One of our professors here, he said in one of his lectures, which was published, there are about 10,500 papers published showing the devastation of trees, insects, animals, plants, and not a single paper out of the 10,500 has ever been commented on in the press, the magazines, the papers, on television, and the BBC are the worst for covering this up. Not a single paper has reached the public. And I can verify that. I had a letter, which I've still got, from, have you heard of Sir David Attenborough?
Yeah.
I had a letter from Sir David Attenborough advising me to take my information to the BBC to make a documentary. He said, contact a man called Neil Nightingale at the BBC Natural History, Bristol. I've written 3 times, I've phoned twice, they won't even answer. They won't phone me, they won't even reply, the BBC. But of course, they are pushing out Wi-Fi and mobile phones. So the BBC will not even reply to my letters. I wrote to the top scientists, the top organisation in London, namely the Royal Society, and I sent them the evidence and said, this is crucial, can I please come and give a lecture to your scientists, because look at what we have with the animals, the trees, the future of our children, everything. And I got a letter back saying, we are not prepared to discuss this. Of course, it's a government body. I wrote to my own university, Exeter, asking to prove it, because I am a qualified experimental physicist, university qualified. I said, please let me come. I had a sponsor to pay all of my fees, and Exeter University, which is one of the top 10 in the country, said, never contact us ever again. I'm banned from my own university. I tried 6 other universities. Those that replied refused to talk to me, said, you know, we will not allow this. And the last university I contacted was the Open University. It has a worldwide reputation for research, academic ability. I wrote to the Open University. I said, please let me do some research. I want to prove what I believe in. They asked me to send the papers, which I did, and then I never heard anything for months. And I rang up and I spoke to a Dr. Jamie Hall of the biophysical laboratories, and he said, we can't have you to do your research here. And I said, well, why? I'm qualified, I have the funding, what's stopping me? And he said, your work is too political. In other words, no university, none that I've approached, even my own university, will go up against the government. It is too political. So you can't do the research to prove, not in this country, to prove what is going on.
And even if you did it in a private institution, they would never say that it was good enough.
No, but I mean,
yeah.
I have 2 university degrees and a diploma. I'm well qualified to do this. A multi-millionaire in this country said, I will cover all the costs. I had a blank check, but they wouldn't do it. It's too political. And this is where we are. We have a government that controls what the universities say. And I think that is a very sad state in the world. And I know it happens in some of the universities in America, and I know it happens in, I think it's a Scandinavian university, where people are either sacked or told not to research this.
Yeah, in Karolinska, in Stockholm.
That's
Johansson, he got the message that either he leaves or he shuts up. And they have moved him around. He's sitting in almost a little box now, and he cannot do anything because he doesn't get any funding.
There was a professor of experimental medicine in America who I've spoken to, and he rang me one night and he said, be careful, Barrie. He said, I have just lost my entire research department and from that university, speaking out against the mobile industry. And he got a job with another university, but overnight they shut him down, overnight.
Yeah, we also saw that with Professor Santini in France with the mobile towers. And I have, you know, Professor Mile from Germany, he talks about free energy and scalar waves and all this. But I did an interview with him last year, or actually I let him talk because, you know, he's in all this physics and I'm not in physics, so I couldn't really say anything intelligent. So, but he said I won't talk about the mobile phone industry, but he talked half an hour, and when that comes out together with this, you know, it's. But Barrie, I remember when I go to Copenhagen, I hate being in the big cities. Actually, I prefer countryside with nature and animals and so on. But you know, normally I get tired. And I also get very warm. Could that be due to the heavy CO2, so that there's actually not enough oxygen? So therefore you get exactly tired, and you get more and more apathetic and lazy. And
well, it could be due to the CO2. It could also be due that maybe you are becoming sensitive to microwaves.
Not really.
But you wouldn't know if you're becoming sensitive.
No.
There is no way for you to know. Unless you go somewhere where there are no microwaves and you recover, you wouldn't know, and this is one of the problems.
Yeah, but I stay normally places where there are no microwaves.
Yeah. Oh, then you're okay.
Yeah.
Then you're okay.
And I stay with the computer sometimes 15 hours a day without problems.
But I mean, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide poisoning, yes.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So that's exactly what's happening. And people are becoming so, you know, it's sad for me because I say, we need to do this, and they say, oh, you tell us what we need to do, and people go into resistance. I try to free them from this, but that's what's happening. Too much CO2 from the wireless.
But what I can't understand is why these people have so much power. I mean, people in government must now realise what is going on. We have kings, queens, the people I've spoken to, they all realise what is going on. The people themselves realise what is going on.
Yeah.
When I was in court once trying to argue against the Tetra, and at that time there were some 90 other places in this country fighting Tetra. You know, so people know what's going on, they know the harm, but nobody is able to do anything, and that's what confuses me.
Yeah, but it's really, I've been through all that too. What I see this as, when people become so influenced from these technologies and lose their energy, their vital energy, they become automatically fearful. And being in fear, they cannot take action. And then again, they are all dependent now on income, 2 incomes, because the houses have got bigger and bigger and bigger, and the cars, because people have got more materialistic. So now they're so dependent. And in times where we have recession or depression or whatever, the ones controlling, they have the power because the other ones are afraid of being sacked. Because, you know, by all the letters I've written and DVDs I have sent, I would have a very bad taste in my mouth if I were the receivers of that, because how can you resist this and say it's about children, it's about coming generation, they just do this because they need their money.
But it's not just, I mean, when I spoke earlier of the birth defects and the genetic defects in children, it is the birth defect and genetic defect of every living thing. We're talking in the oceans, plant life, trees, animals, even slime mold in the soil. It is because when you get down to the DNA, it is all the same. There is no difference between slime mold DNA and my DNA in terms of at the atomic level how it's made. There are different genes and different chromosomes that work, but when you get to what they're made of, there is no difference between all of them. And they are all affected. Every single living thing on this planet is affected by the microwaves. Everything.
But when you then look again about the GMO and how Monsanto from the US is pushing that through, then it might look like a genetic experiment they're running here, that what we call life, the normal life, the human life and everything, is actually being reprogrammed. It's being changed, so we can only eat things now in the future. That's GMO, and you know, everything is becoming so synthetic in this world. But we will change it next year.
But what confuses me is the people force. I wonder whether the people up there, whether they think that once they've destroyed the planet, there is a spaceship that's going to take them somewhere else to live, because they have to live here. And this is what confuses me, is if they have, do they actually know what they're doing? Because, you know, what's the point of ruining a planet when you've got to live on it? So I can't understand where they're going.
If you look at the picture you have in the background, they are not reaching out for the true God. They are not connected to God, the true God. So
but they must realise that if they want to be wealthy and powerful, you can only be wealthy and powerful if there are people who are poor below you and people who do what you say below you. And if you make them all sick, or you destroy the infrastructure of the planet so there isn't enough food and there are riots and they're all going to come after your palace or something. So I can't understand their mind, the way they're thinking.
No, they have a sick mindset.
Possibly a sick mindset.
They say, you know, it's we're living in a psychopathic control grid or society, and most of the people on top, they're really psychopaths, and they have all the traits, and they're cold-blooded. You know, they will kill you and I without blinking their eyes because they have no empathy.
Oh, I know they are prepared to kill people.
Yeah.
In the experiment I said earlier with the servicemen,
Yeah.
they had 20,000 servicemen, most of whom died. With Tetra, we're probably looking, I don't know, 100,000 people may die of brain tumours. You know, it's a colossal. If we got 7,000 in this country, and there are 150 countries, and this is after 10 years, I mean, it's a colossal amount of people going to die.
And it's a big business.
Yeah, and I mean, but once we start ruining our trees and the bacterium that we need for our food webs and our food chains,
yeah.
They probably can't see that far ahead, unless they've got some other plan. But when I'm speaking, I often say, do the decision makers here think that the bus stop outside the building here is going to take them somewhere safe, because there isn't anywhere safe.
No. It's they're very short-term, and actually sometimes I think we shouldn't think they're too clever, the ones in government and the ones in these positions, because they lack something, ethics, morality, and conscience.
Okay.
So they're not, you can say, if I should be rude, they're not really human. Because if they were, they would not be doing destructive things. They would know that everything they do towards others, they would have to live through themselves.
Yep, I totally agree. Agree.
But we have to, I have confidence, and I think we should come back to that tomorrow. We should...
By all means, yeah. And I know, I mean, I mentioned this when I spoke to the World Foundation for Natural Science.
Yeah.
And I went into this, and maybe with the court cases, I have 2 big court cases next year.
Yeah.
One trying to protect children and one trying to stop Tetra.
Yes.
If I can win those, maybe we can get somewhere.
Yeah, and the video we do here, I will do what I can to make this go all over the world. And I will talk to some people in Denmark. I know there's an old woman, and she might, because she's very caring about her grandchildren and so on. And it's the elderly people, they understand when I come. When I talk to people on my own age, I'm 41, they say, oh, you give me an iPhone, and they don't reflect, but the elderly people, sorry, I don't mean elderly, but over 60, still have the connection to the real human values, to what it is to be a real human being.
Well, I said this, I've said it many times.
Yeah.
It's what I call the silly boy syndrome.
Yeah.
People in power who are really immature, silly boys, and I put a lot of my government there. I mean, our Prime Minister is only 30-something, 40-something, 30-something, and we have what I call silly boys. They're coming out of university with electronic degrees, and they're inventing boxes that will transmit microwaves for children, and they do this and they do that, and they put all of the pulse frequencies into the waves, because the microwaves now don't serve, they have to add pulses for the colour, the speech, the movement, the whatever. And not one of them, with all of these things, not one of them has contacted me or somebody like me to say, I want to put a pulse frequency of 18 pulses a second in the microwaves. Will it affect anything? Or will it do anything? Or should I change it to this? Not one in all of these years.
Yeah.
They don't have the forethought to say, well, hang on, there are people alive that were in the Cold War and knew the spies and knew the microwave weapons and knew what was going on and spoke to these people. Let's just check to see if what we're doing is safe.
Yeah.
And they don't. They just make a box, put it on the market.
And then again I ask, because when you look at how fast all the new technologies come, you can hardly buy a device the next day there's a new one. And I just say there must be someone guiding this development, so-called development, because it's so extreme what comes. So there must be a script in the background saying we need to develop this and this and this, because we need to implement that payment in the future is by the mobile phone, and it's all implemented. Bus card, you use a mobile phone, that's in Denmark. They are implementing everything, so soon we will not be able to use cash, only mobile phone, so I will be forced to have a mobile phone or don't buy anything. So I prefer the last thing.
But I don't have a mobile phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just totally agree with you. They have no idea what they're doing. Absolutely no idea what they're doing, these university graduates.
No, it's not even rude to say that they are ignorant, because they seem to have forgotten. They have some kind of education, but they need the very important one.
But even here, churches are putting mobile transmitters in their towers, and the church makes, I don't know, £250,000 per year, whatever, because you have a nice transmitter inside the tower. And people have said, well, you know, other people with phones, and they can download pornography and all, and they're using the church to download pornography and crime. And
but it's a good metaphor, because if we see that the church is now making money from the mobile phone industry, then there's a saying that you cannot serve God and mammon at the same time. And what we're seeing today is actually that the church is being destroyed, the spiritual part of the church. And that's also what the same agenda is about. Therefore it's important that we walk with the flag in front and keep walking, because no one is going to change this.
But it's a sad state, and I think it's got to be stopped.
It will be.
Somehow it's got to be stopped.
We got 1 year and we will make it. Because you see, you have your trials coming. We make this and this will be spread.